When you're watching college football on TV, you see the product that's on the field, right? But what I've always been intrigued by is what's going on behind the scenes. Who put their helmets together, who got their uniforms all put together, who's got the equipment on the sidelines, how does it get transported to the stadium, especially in away games? Do they ever miss anything? What's going on behind the scenes? The cool thing about today is I'm going to be talking to the director of football equipment operations from the University of Houston. And it's a guy that I used to know, but that I used to work with at bodybuilding.com here in Boise. His name's Kevin Haynes. And when we were here at the same job, we would often talk about his experience when he was a grad student over at Florida State. We talked college football and whatnot. But as we both moved on in our careers, I've kept a close eye on where he's gone. And he's been to some really cool places. Right now, he's at Houston, as I mentioned, but he's been at Boise State. He's been at Florida State. He's been at San Diego State. And we'll be talking about some of the cool things he's learned there, some of the stories of being an equipment manager, the good, the bad, the perks about the job. The quote that he has at the end of this that you'll hear is something that I think we could all apply to our own careers. So please stay tuned towards the end of this. But we'll talk about some of the players he's been around, the good, the bad, who's left a mark on him, some of the best stadiums he's been to, and just some of the stories and the lessons that he's learned in this field of work. And as you guys know, my job here with this podcast for the last 8 years is to deliver a panoramic view on sports. I'm trying to show you sports from all angles. And this is giving you an opportunity to see it from behind the scenes with an equipment manager. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode of the Gametime Guru. So
what time is it? Game time.
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Excited to have you guys back with us for another week here. We are almost officially 8 years completed of the podcast. 2017, January, I started the show. And the interesting thing about this is back then, I was actually working at a company here locally in Idaho. And this is where I met my guest, but he's been traveling around all over the place. But it was during that time, I actually found out what he does. And I found it super fascinating. And I've kind of kept an eye on him throughout the last couple of years, just kind of seeing what he's been doing. I've enjoyed just checking him out on social media, seeing the places he's been. And that's why I'm excited to bring him onto the show. His name is Kevin Haynes, and he's going to be sharing some, insight as to his journey as an equipment manager, doing stuff at the collegiate level for some big time programs. So Kevin, thanks for joining the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So would you mind letting the audience know like where you currently are at and where you're currently working?
All right. Yeah. Currently I'm the director of football equipment operations at the University of Houston. Just got here in May, so getting our feet wet. We're in our first season here, and things are looking a little bit up right now, so we're hoping to keep that going.
So talk to us about that too. So director of football
Equipment operations.
Equipment operations. Okay. Director of football equipment operations. So is this your first time in that leadership capacity of this particular job, or is this like what you've been doing for a matter of years now?
It's kind of funny that this is my third school working in football, and my role really hasn't changed a whole lot. My title's changed a ton, but job requirements have been about the same. So where I'm at now, even having the director title of football, I do still have a director of equipment operations who operates above me. And he helps out with football as well. So at San Diego State, where I was before here, it was kind of a similar thing. I didn't have that title, but yeah, I still had somebody in our equipment department that I reported to that oversaw me and things like that. And then Florida State before that, I was an assistant was my title there. But it was kind of the same structure where there was our head guy acted over all of football. So it's interesting that out of those three places, it's been a very similar role, but my title has changed a little bit. So sometimes that matters, sometimes it doesn't, but it is what it is.
For sure. No, that's cool. But as we're talking, I mean, you're currently in Houston. We're at San Diego State. You mentioned Florida State. And then if I'm not mistaken, were you at Boise State as well for a short period? I can't remember.
Yeah. So when I left bodybuilding.com, it was to take an Olympic sport equipment job at Boise State, where I went to school. It's kind of funny. I never really intended to get into equipment. I wanted to coach basketball. That was my life plan, and twists and turns and, bounces of balls. And here I am working in equipment. But yeah, when I left bodybuilding, I had men's, women's basketball, swimming and diving, gymnastics, and beach and indoor volleyball at Boise State. So, which I say was the best kept secret job in the world, but had to get into football.
Man, that's wild, actually. That's super cool. Kind of thinking back on that and just kind of how life takes you in different directions. Let's take a look at that, though, too. The difference in like those types of sports, the Olympic sports, and then that of football. I mean, in most schools, Kevin, especially in bigger programs like you've been around, San Diego State, probably a smaller program, but like Houston and Florida State, obviously like bigger programs, especially Florida State. But football is a money generator. It's like one of the only revenue generating sports in collegiate athletics. Some schools you'll see basketball fall into that category from time to time, but typically it's football that generates the revenue and it trickles amongst the rest of the athletic departments. And I don't know. I would imagine things are done differently at different universities. What have you seen at the bigger schools you've been to in your role in the equipment side of things that you might not have seen at the smaller schools, just like maybe at the Boise States and so forth from a revenue standpoint?
It's kind of a joke that we have even in equipment rooms I've been in. Like, no matter where you go, you're doing the same job. You just happen to wear a different shirt. Some schools have a little bit more money to spend than others. I had kind of a unique experience at Florida State, having gone to grad school there in 2014, right after coming off a national championship. Have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback there with Jameis Winston. And, Jimbo Fisher, one of the greatest coaches in college football. And we didn't even think about spending money, and it was unreal. We're chartering Delta flights everywhere we go. Then fast forward, 2017, my first year on staff there, we're again flying Delta, and we start off with University of Alabama in our first game, playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Third game they'd ever played in that dome. Quarterback gets hurt, and that's kind of where Florida State football hit a pivot point where they're kind of what they are this year. And, we went through some budget cuts. We had an athletic director change. And so the 4 years I was on staff looked a little bit more like what I see now at Houston or what we had at San Diego State. Like, we flew an airline called Sun Country, which is the same that Boise State uses, the same up until this year that San Diego State uses. And we fly here at Houston. So, it's amazing that even though, you see they have the 80,000 seat stadium and things like that, a lot of the things are still done pretty similarly, just depending on what that budget looks like that year. So, unfortunately for me, when I was at Florida State, we cut $18 million out of the athletic department budget, and that included a lot of the nice frills that you expect at a place like Florida State.
Wow, $18 million. So that's crazy. If you look at that, like at a school, I'm a Boise State alum, but I'm a huge Ohio State Buckeyes fan. So I see different.
I'll forgive you for that. I forgive you for
that. So, but if you look at Boise State, $18 million. Imagine I'm just taking that out would be insane, dude. That's like a huge percentage of that. That's crazy. But what does a day-to-day look like for you in the equipment side of things? I guess, let's say it's during season. What's a normal day look like for you on the equipment management side of things?
Sure. So it gets real Groundhog's Day. Once you get through fall camp and things like that, it's really Groundhog's Day. Monday's a Monday, Tuesday's a Tuesday. For the week, you're leaving typically on Friday, depending on if you have a Saturday game this week. Next week, we go to Arizona, so we'll leave on Thursday because we play Friday night. But a typical day, my alarm goes off at 4 a.m., and usually I drag my butt out of bed around 4:30, get dressed, head on in. I like to get a workout in the morning, so that really hasn't changed since the time at bodybuilding.com. I still enjoy having that free access to a weight room. So I'll do a good hour workout or so, get into the equipment room probably about 6:30. Students roll in at 7. Players will have meetings until usually about 8:15. And then we're on the practice field at 8:35, typically 8:35, 8:45, somewhere in there. So then depending on what day it is, typically we're out there for anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. We'll roll in, we'll get things cleaned up, we start the laundry, and then we get a little bit of lunch. One of the perks we have here at Houston is they provide lunch for us, which is kind of nice. I haven't had that anywhere else. And then we'll get things ready. We're packing, we're cleaning, just depending on what happened the week prior, what we're going into. This week's a little bit slow because we're on a bye week this week, which is outstanding. Gets me a little bit extra time. And then we'll staff meet usually afternoon about 4 or 3, depending on what day it is. And then I battled the Houston traffic, which people warned me about, but I had no idea it was so gnarly. Today's drive was about an hour home. So, rolled in the door about 6 o'clock and ate a little bit of dinner, get the kids washed up, get the kids to bed, shower myself, talk to the wife for, 10, 15 minutes, and then crash out and do it again the next day.
Crying out loud, man. That's crazy, though. Like, I mean, it is Groundhog Day, but you've got a lot going on every day, depending on the day, whatever it is, but there's different tasks to be completed. Out of your experience, I guess, well, here's another question I've had, like, just kind of from the equipment side of things. Have you had any, like, horror stories, Kevin, where, like, you guys were traveling and the equipment team forgot something? Or has that never happened? Are you guys pretty good at, like, crossing your T's, dotting your I's type of thing?
We are pretty good at it. The nice thing is that, equipment managers kind of believe that we're all the same, like I said, just for different shirts. So if we have an issue, often you can talk to the guys at the other school and see, what exactly they can borrow. So first year on staff, we forgot our kicking net when we went up to Duke and had to borrow a kicking net from them for the game, which is what they use to warm up. You see, Monday Night Football, things like that. You see the kicker warming up on the sideline, and they're using the kicking net that I'm talking about. Ironically, that same game, our graduate assistants had forgotten. That year, we were using the wristbands with the plays in them for our entire offense. Well, one of our graduate assistants had forgotten all of the wristbands back in Tallahassee. And so we were, and we pack extras. We pack extras of everything. And I joke that, we're in the business of in case stuff happens. Like that's our job. We're insurance a lot of the times. And so we had 10 or so extras in our trunks, but they needed 25, which is a huge number. So they're calling around to Dick's Sporting Goods, Big Five, whatever they can come across to try to piece these together. We even asked Duke, we borrowed a couple from Duke. And so it's weird that it was the same trip, but it is kind of funny that, we do have one of those jobs where not often do people know what we do until we don't do it or it goes wrong. So luckily, for the most part, we've been pretty lucky that it's been detrimental for gets. So, you operate off a checklist and it gets routine where you're putting the same stuff on the truck. I mean, we have a 53-foot truck that we take every single week. That's just cram packed with everything you can think of. So I did have a mild heart attack. My first game, like I mentioned, was against Alabama. Derwin James was on our team that year. And as we ran out of the tunnel, one of my students ran up and said, "We can't find Derwin's helmet." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And luckily it had just been moved in the locker room. But first game on staff, that Derwin James's helmet's missing.
Oh, dude. See, that's what I was like wondering. There are so many like moving pieces to this. There's so much equipment. There's so many things outside of just the uniforms. It's like all this other stuff too. And like, I always wonder if stuff gets missed, and like how it happens. I have a question for you too, Kevin. You were mentioning how like they used to have like the wristbands and stuff. Like this season, college football specifically has implemented like the radio communications inside the headsets. And I was just curious how that like affects your job. Do you guys have any kind of role in making sure that the headsets work and the speakers working inside of that? Like, how does that go when you guys are piecing stuff together?
Yeah. So every school is different.
Okay.
This school I've been at where we don't have a designated headset person. I know Boise State has Andy that runs their headsets for them. San Diego State, I had a guy named Scott who ran them for us. So we had a couple guys at Florida State that ran them for us. Here, we didn't hire one this year. So me and Andrew, my supervisor, we run the headsets, including the coach to player. So the way that works is a typical game. I got 3 quarterbacks with them in their helmets. One of the quarterbacks, we put an earpiece in, who's doing our signaling. And then on the defensive side, you're only allowed one on the field at a time, but I got 5 defensive guys with speakers in their helmets right now too. And you have to declare that every single week who's going to be wearing them. So, it's no secret who those guys are. But yeah, that falls onto us. So, and then with the Big 12, we use a company called GSC, who does the same coach-to-player communication for the NFL, which I believe 3 of the 4 Power 4 conferences use GSC. Mountain West went with CoachCom, which is another one of the big headset companies. So we'll do that, and it's pretty simple. It's a walkie-talkie system that you select the channel for wherever you're at. Practice, we have a special channel for practice, and it works. We've had minimal issues with it, so it's been pretty smooth. I was kind of hopeful that it would eliminate the need for all those crazy signalers and boards and things on the sideline, because believe it or not, those are student equipment managers. Those are typically 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who are down there throwing these boards up with headsets on and going crazy, and it selfishly eats into my staff. And I was really hoping that it would get some of those signalers away, but coaches want to go fast, and they feel like if they can signal and have that communication, they're better off.
It's like best of both worlds kind of thing. So with those, it's interesting that just even that concept, I wanted to touch base on, just unpack that a little bit. You mentioned different brands for different conferences. That's an expense, I would imagine. Maybe it's not, but like it seems like just even the addition of having the coach to player communication would be an additional expense, which I guess I don't think a lot of people even realize that. I mean, it's probably good for the benefit of the game, and just probably, I'm a Buckeyes fan. I would like Connor Stallions not stealing signs or whatever, but it is what it is. But, I think it would have eliminated a lot of that possibility and of any of those types of things. But just hearing how different conferences do different things and work with different companies, that's a whole nother business venture in and of itself. And this is something I never even thought about. Kevin, when you've been around, do you become a fan, like a true fan of the players and the programs that you're around, just because you're in it with the day-to-day? Like, do you find yourself like kind of becoming engulfed in it as a fan, or is it kind of more just a business thing for you?
One thing that's been interesting, this is the first true place where I've been where I'm completely neutral. Even being at San Diego State, was still a Mountain West school, and every week that Boise State wasn't playing San Diego State, I'm a Boise State alum myself. So, always rooting for the blue and orange, except for the week that we played them, obviously. So there was still a little bit of that, I don't know, bias along with it. This is my first time being truly neutral. And it's weird. It's a different experience than being an alumni. At Florida State, I have a graduate degree from Florida State. And so had a little bit of a vested interest. I grew up a Florida State and Michigan fan, so I'll throw that in there. I grew up Florida State and Michigan. Go blue. So I having grown up a fan, but now I'm in a place where it's completely neutral. It's been interesting learning, though. And as an equipment manager, you have to learn the traditions. You have to learn what's valuable to the school, because often we say the football program is the front porch, and if the football program is the front porch, well, the football uniform itself is typically, that's the front door. That's the focal piece that people see on that front porch and think about. So, we really want to make sure that we're staying true to those alumni and to those traditions, to make sure that we're representing them well. So it makes it a little bit hard to become a fan. Now, the part I like the most about my job is the relationships you build. So rooting for individual people, rooting for coaching staffs and things like that. Yeah. But as far as, it's one of those where, it's a job, just the same as, you go to work every day and put on a shirt, and I love where I'm at, but am I a Houston Cougar for life? Well, maybe not, because you never know what the future holds, but, always be a fan of the people I work with and work for.
Heck yeah. No, that's awesome to hear. Kevin, there's a little flashback in time. I remember at bodybuilding.com, I was talking to you. You probably don't remember this, but we were chatting about a show called Last Chance U, and there was a quarterback on there that you had known from Florida State's days, and I just thought it was intriguing. You had talked about how, like, I don't know what your relationship with him was, but you were talking about how when he was at Florida State as compared to when he was on the show, like, it was just a different type of personality type of deal. You were just kind of giving me some insights. Now, I know that was like 8 years ago, but
remember.
Yeah, you were chatting with me about it. And I was just curious. I thought about this often. Anytime I see you post on social media and stuff, just the places that you've gone, back to Florida, like all the things, like you've been around there and seen some big time players, big time places. What are some of the players who are some of the players that you've been around that stick out to you as like solid athletes, and why did they stand out to you?
Obviously Jameis Winston was a freak. And the thing I love about Jameis is that what you see is what you get. The guy you see that's goofy on TV, that's who he is. He was one of those people that, I don't know that I ever saw him without a smile on his face. He was always engaging with everybody. For us as equipment people, it was really easy there. I remember one time walking through the locker room and, they put their laundry on these loop things, and that's how they don't get lost in the laundry. And I went to pick his up for him, and he goes, "Hey, man, you don't need to do that. I can take care of it." Really? Oh, shoot. Because other guys will just leave it on the floor and expect people to come clean up after him. So not only as a athlete, I mean, I haven't seen a quarterback yet since him that when he throws the ball, you really hear it come out of his hand, and it's unreal. And you can throw it downfield with ease. Dalvin Cook was probably the fastest running back I've ever seen in person. And then, Derwin, like I talked about, is just unbelievable. And another one of those really, really good people. I had Jalen Ramsey when I was in grad school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of guys come through Florida State. So, and then even, I had Brian Burns when I was back in 2017, and he's another one of those people where, as good of a football player as he is, he's a fantastic person on top of it. Who else? There's a long list. Obviously, being at San Diego State, we weren't having the best of years. We did have some solid guys that, really good guys that I always root for. Some of them have moved on to bigger schools. I'm not sure that we have anybody from when I was there that went on to the NFL other than, practice squad type guys. And then now we'll see what we have. We have some pretty talented receivers. We have a pretty talented guy who's moved into our number one quarterback position, Zion Chris. And so, we'll see what the future holds for a lot of our guys because, they have a lot of talent here. We've got a safety named AJ Halsey who, he's not afraid to go up and smack people, and he's also, pretty good at hawking on the ball. So not quite to the level of the guys that we had at Florida State during the good years, but still some pretty fantastic athletes.
Man, that's super cool. Like, dude, as a fanboy myself, I mean, I'm 36 years old, but I still like absolutely love the idea of just being around like high caliber athletes. I think it's just a cool thing to be around because they're very rare. But like you were saying, it's probably pretty cool to see them as people too. I mean, I'm sure that there's some other stories is like when it's not cool to meet them as a person. I've had a couple experiences like that myself, even as a podcaster, man, interviewing people and then getting to know them as a human. I'm like, oh yeah, the whole don't meet your heroes type of deal. So it's like, I've had a couple of those, to be honest, and that's just the reality of it. But I'm sure it's cool to see it on the other side too, like you were saying. I am curious. So like San Diego State, like some of these, okay, you've worked for some schools that are like, they've got some dope uniforms, but even Houston's got some sick color, like uni combos and stuff. Like, but San Diego State, like to me, at least in the Mountain West, unbelievable like helmets. So like when they do their sick like Aztec weird whatever it is helmet,
calendar. This is Aztec calendar.
That's what it is. Yeah, dude, that's like the dopest helmet ever. And I'm a big fan of like the whole look good, feel good, play good, like Deion Sanders mentality type of deal. So Florida State, like if you get the right color scheme, the right everything, and then you put a visor on the helmet, looks so dope, right? Yep. So what is your favorite uni combo that you've been able to like work around with the programs you've been to?
Oh my goodness. I think it may be coming up. A lot of people have heard about the Houston blue uniform that we had last year out here. Not supposed to say it's similar to the Houston Oilers, and we had to do some reworking thanks to some issues with the NFL. But we've revamped that and reached an agreement with them. So not our next game at Arizona, but our next home game against Baylor, we're going to bring those out. And stay tuned because those look pretty awesome. I think that'll probably be my favorite. San Diego State, surprisingly, was pretty simple. I mean, they had a black jersey, a white jersey, and black pants, and then they rolled that Aztec calendar helmet, which, it's iconic. It is beautiful. As an equipment guy, I loved it because it was painted on the helmet. I didn't have to worry about replacing stickers, and it was super easy. Florida State, we were pretty traditional. We went a little bit crazy with some things. We had a black uniform, and we had a garnet helmet that we wore with it. And secretly, that thing was a nightmare. Just the paint matching on the helmet was never right. From a distance, you really couldn't tell. But if you got down close to it, there would be obviously it has a spear on the side of the helmet. And the original design was supposed to kind of ombre from the garnet color, which is really a shade of a pinkish purple. A lot of people think it's maroon, but it's kind of a pinkish purple. And it was supposed to ombre to a black in the bottom. Well, somewhere along the line, it turned into just an abrupt dividing line. And where the companies would paint it often wouldn't be where the spear needed to be. So not only do you have the spear going down, and now it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. I was so glad we only wore it a few times. One of my favorite combos we did with that, though, is we did that garnet helmet, a white jersey, and garnet pants, and we brought that out against Louisville, and that would have been 18, I think, at Louisville, and it looked absolute. And then we beat them on a last-second play. So that was one of my favorite Florida State combos that we ever had.
Oh, it's funny, dude. I just pulled up that uniform combo. Now that I know the story behind it, like the pain in the butt that it was, that's actually really funny. I'm gonna go back and look at that some more.
Yep. Well, and even so, in 2014, after the national championship, they redid the entire Florida State uniform. Some positives, and there was actually the helmet, the gold helmet color changed, and originally it was like a khaki color. And it was absolutely awful. We wore it against Oklahoma State when we played in Dallas. I want to say we only had it for one more week before it was a bye week, and everybody wanted to change it back to the original gold. And thank God they did, because it looked so much better back in the original gold. But even then, the face mask was a matte satin garnet that, again, between the different vendors that you would use, they would come back different shades of garnet, all the way from pink to a really dark, deep maroon. So you had the rainbow mask. And then finally, when Coach Norvell came in, he came into my office one day and was like, "What is going on with our face masks? Why can't they match?" And like, "Coach, we've been working on this for 3 years." And then I had a sample from another company of this kind of a candy, really glossy one that they wear now. I said, "Well, Coach, what do you think of this?" And I put it up with the helmet, and he goes, "That's what I want." And so that year we changed it to the more glossy garnet face mask that you see them wearing now. And it just looks 1,000 times better.
Oh, wow. What a story there too, man. You got a little influence on the current face mask. Let's go.
Yeah. We do. But I don't, I mean, I'm 40 years old now, so I don't claim to have a whole lot of swag or drip or whatever the kids call it these days. So I get compliments every once in a while. Like today I wore some Jordans that the guys liked, but I try to stay out of those conversations kind of as much as possible, just because I don't know what's cool. I grew up in the era where, you just kind of put on the basics and you went out and got after it. These guys are, the color undershirt matters, the type of wristbands matters, the different visors matter. Like, it's unreal. I couldn't imagine, but we'll just keep it simple.
Dude, I will say, like, I was kind of like growing up in around the same area as you. So like, I didn't really get to have that opportunity to like get all that. Even in high school with football, they had like, you had you had to have like a medical release on if you could wear a visor of a certain tint, you know what I mean? Like it had to be very clear, and it couldn't be a certain percent smoky on there, because otherwise you couldn't wear it. Like it was it was like all these regulations on it. So most people just didn't do it because it was annoying. But like I'm not gonna lie, dude, there's something nasty about what, like the old Ricky Williams days, dark visor, LT, like all these guys, like it's nasty. I love it.
My high school, all the cool kids wanted the cowboy collars. But as you don't wear a cowboy collar as a defensive back, so I didn't ever venture into that.
Yeah, you didn't need to. Yeah, you're the little guys that are fast. You weren't the big linebackers or fullbacks and whatnot.
I wouldn't say little. I wouldn't say fast.
Oh man, it's awesome though. Hey, so Kevin, what's one of your favorite memories so far in your career thus far of being like in the equipment side of things?
It happens regularly. I love getting to share what I do with my family. And it was awesome. What was it? 2018 and 19, my wife, She's a cheerleading coach by trade, and she actually was the all-girl cheerleading coach at Florida State. And so I would see her on the sidelines. And that was one of the coolest things was on game day, sharing that with her. Because what we do, a lot of people don't ever have access to or get to experience. And so instead of coming home and telling her about my day, she was there with me. And obviously we're not standing next to her, but, to go over, give her a hug before the game and after the game. But now having, 2 kids, I love my kids have sideline passes that post game they can come down and share that with me. I'll be really transparent that there's been some times where, I struggle with the amount of time that I have to invest in my job, and it feels real selfish at times. But I'll come home and my wife will tell me that, the kids love being at the stadium. The kids love going to games. So getting to share that is, that's a very vague answer to your question. Is a little bit more poignant than that, but that's the thing I love the most about what I do. And so those multiple memories that we get to share make up what my favorite memory is of it. But, to talk about games, obviously that first one against Alabama, against Nick Saban, we were number 3. Alabama was number 1. Opening day, they're saying it was probably the best opening game ever in college football. We didn't really do our part in it. DeAndre Francois, our quarterback, got hurt and all that. So history, but yeah, and I'm really bad because I have a bad memory for things. I get home from a game and I have no idea what I saw. So often I'll watch it back on TV. But like I said at the beginning of the show, like the relationships and the experiences all together is just what is so memorable for watching guys. I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I know, that's not a popular team these days, but have been since Joe Montana went. And so, but also getting to root for guys on Sunday that, I know, and that's a lot of fun. And that, that's my favorite part.
Heck yeah, dude. All of those are really cool to me because, like, if you think about it, man, like not a lot of people get to share their profession with their family, so to speak. Like I don't get the opportunity to do that. I'm a director of marketing over at a company here, and like I don't get to share the ins and outs. Like I work my butt off, and I come home and I have, like, it's exactly like you said. You get to tell your wife and kids what you did, but they don't really care because it's not that exciting. But they'll listen to you, but I'm gone all day and. Same thing, but if I had the opportunity to have a job where I could share that, I feel the same way, Kevin, when I coach basketball, right? And I'm traveling across the country for travel ball and stuff. And then like when my wife gets to come with me to some of those trips and we get to go, she gets to watch me coach, but then like gets to experience the whole thing with me. I feel so much better that way. So when you were talking about that, I'm like, dude, that would be amazing. So I do actually understand why that would be like a favorite part of the gig. Cause like that's a huge piece when you're sacrificing a lot of time. It's really cool when you can at least make up for some of that time by putting them in there in that element. And as a kid, dude, if I could go down to the sideline, dude, are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, dude. It'd be this coolest thing. So,
well, even to the point where like my daughter's now been to 3 bowl games. My son, when he was 2 months old, we went to Hawaii for the Hawaii Bowl. I mean, how many kids get to do things like that? And
dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned your memory's not like always top notch as far as the games are concerned, but you've been to a couple big places. I want to know about a stadium. Like, what is your favorite stadium you've been to? I'm a huge fanatic about atmosphere, man. So like, I want to hear your favorite stadium you've been to.
Atmosphere wise, shoot. We went to Oklahoma this year, and Oklahoma gets it going on, and that was a good time. Miami for a Miami-Florida State game. I probably wouldn't say that if I was at any other school, but Miami packs Hard Rock Stadium for Florida State, and that's pretty awesome. They throw batteries at you on the sideline, which is pretty cool. The Swamp, a lot of people, would say being a Florida State guy, why would you want to go to the Swamp? I love going to the Swamp. It's cool how from the sideline it looks like the side comes all the way down to the field, so it's just a big wall of people. Environment wise, Notre Dame should be on everybody's bucket list of places to go. Wear the other team's colors and you're going to walk by people and they're just going to say, welcome to Notre Dame. And it's unreal in the history. I love history. So to get to experience a place like that is unreal. Again, I'm a Chiefs fan, so I fanboyed really hard when we went to Arrowhead and played Kansas a few weeks ago. So really fanboyed hard there. And it takes a lot for me to do that. And I was snapping pictures everywhere. But you know what? And this isn't just because you're sitting there, but Boise State probably has one of the best environments out there. And yeah, I'm biased too, but I've never worked football at Boise State. But Albertson Stadium, it's always Broncos Stadium to me, but Albertson Stadium gets it going on. It doesn't matter the crowd size, it's how involved they are. And that place just gets rocking, and I love it. But yeah.
Dude, all of those are like super cool. With the Boise State thing too, man, I'll be real, Kevin. It's crazy because I'm an alum, graduated from there, die hard my whole life, been in the game since I was 6 years old, season ticket holder I was for 7 years over there as well. And so like, but what happened to me was I went to an Ohio State Oklahoma game in 2017 when Baker Mayfield planted the flag in the middle of the field. I was at that game. It was my first time in the shoe in Columbus, and there's 109,000 people there. And I'm like, oh wow, I realized like, oh, there is a difference. I used to say, oh no, I'm a Boise State guy. This is the same thing. Like it's the same product on the field. No, it's not. I went to a Boise State Troy game the following week when I came back home, went to the Troy game, and I was like, oh yeah. No, like this ain't the same thing. But I will tell you this. I've been pretty critical of Boise State from their environment perspective since that game until this year, because Jeremiah Dickey, who's the athletic director over there, has done a phenomenal job at like really enhancing the in-game experience. I think a lot of these big schools, I went to the Oregon-Ohio State game a couple weeks back, like a month ago over in Autzen Stadium. I love their in-game experience. I think the fan interaction during the quarter and during the timeout breaks, all this stuff really plays a role into it. And I think Boise State's getting there, man. I think they're like that's really enhanced over the last 2 years, 3 years or so. And like the place already gets loud for 36,000 people as much as it can. But now it's starting to pile in a little bit more. So I'm excited for that too. It's funny you brought them up because I've been talking about them a little bit more. So
I got to be honest. You know, I love Eddie Nunez, our new athletic director we just hired here. He's been great, but I was really hoping we were going to steal Jeremiah Dickey from y'all. And
do that.
I've heard nothing but good things about him.
I love that, dude. I had him here on the show, and dude, the fact that like just all the stuff he has to battle with a very limited budget, so to speak. I mean, comparatively speaking to some of these big programs, like, dude, the fact that he's been able to do what he does, it's just insane. And then the team wins, the hires that he's made, just like it's crazy what he's been able to overcome over here at this tiny school.
Basketball get a tournament win. It's time for Coach. I want to see Coach Rice get a tournament win. Been there enough time. I want to see it. And he's the guy. He's going to get it done. But
you think he's going to get done? I'm sure hoping he gets it done because he's got a short leash right now, man.
That's where I started out when I was a student. I was a student manager for him in 2013. Teams with Derek Marks and Ryan Watkins and Jeff Loriaga and those guys, Mikey Thompson, and then the Aussies, obviously. But so I'm always rooting for those guys. And I want to see it happen.
Dude, I'm a fan of them as well. I got a lot of those guys that I got a lot of respect for over there in the program. I got a buddy of mine, the kid I coached basketball this year, is a student manager for the basketball program over there now too. So he's loving that whole experience because Leon's letting him, do the thing there, and he's loving it too. I think they will get a win. If we're just being honest, I think they should get one, and they have a lot of potential this year specifically. I actually think they're gonna make a run at it again. I don't know, man. How many times can we get there and not get a win? It's just getting so frustrating. But
well, the Dayton.
Go ahead.
They got screwed at Dayton a few years ago.
That was the Derek Marks. Were you there still at that time? No, it was Derek Marks' last year there though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the year after I was gone. Played Dayton in the first. That was crap.
And it was bogus, dude. There was a couple, like, not only was it was just a bogus situation to put him there, and then that game itself we should have won that game. There was some questionable things that happened there, and that was bogus. I thought Derek got the crap into the deal. I was hoping that he would get a win too, because I like that dude. Been following him too in his professional career.
I actually see them. They came for the TBT tournament. Is that what
Once a Bronco. You got to see him?
Yeah, I watched them play, and ironically, the New Mexico team, who we used to go back and forth with New Mexico back then. And so it was really weird. It was almost like being in the Twilight Zone, but it was good to see those guys.
Oh, that's so funny, dude. Yeah, that squad is awesome. That Once a Bronco squad was pretty nasty this year. They had a potential if they would have gotten past that second round with y'all. So,
sorry to get
no, that's dope, dude. So, Kevin, as you as you look back at your career thus far, and I guess maybe looking into the future, you see the ins and outs of football. Do you like, I mean, sometimes when you're in the midst of it all, I talked to some guys that worked here at Boise State and on the operations side of things, similar positions. And, they had, it kind of burnt them out from the fandom of football a little bit, because they got to see the good and the bad of like the coaching staff. When you're getting coaches on the day to day and you get to see their good side and bad side, because it's their day to day stuff, sometimes it can turn you off a little bit. I'm just curious, like, do you still consider yourself a fan of athletics, or do you kind of feel like, how has this job affected you as a collegiate athletics fan?
Sure. I'll be honest. I got painted back in the COVID year. Just some things went on within the athletic department, and one thing after another. And yeah, I got burnt out, and it turned out to be 18 months off. We went a little crazy. We left Tallahassee. We bought a fifth wheel. We're living in a fifth wheel and moved back to California. And honestly, we were loving living in a fifth wheel. Then come to find out that my son was on the way. And so we were like, well, shoot, I guess we can't live in a fifth wheel anymore. We were down on the beach in San Diego. And so, just kind of started exploring. And that's when I got back at San Diego State. They happened to have a position at the same time I was looking, which was really, really awesome. But yeah, it absolutely does change. For me, it changes a lot. There are weekends I come home and I don't want to watch football because I see it day in and day out. But I try to keep in mind it. And this is a hard time of the year. You get to about October and it's a long year. I mean, especially the college game these days that, we've really been going since the beginning of June.
Right.
You have summer camps in June where you have high school kids coming in, you have recruiting. Then July hits and coaches go on vacation, but that's when all the Nike orders and things like that are rolling in. And so we're getting ready for fall camp. You start fall camp the last week of July typically, and then your ball's to the wall. And so October hits and you're feeling a little burned out. But a strategy I've tried to keep in mind, and I've been doing this for a few years now. I talk about my 10-year-old self, kind of like you were talking about being a kid getting to go down on the sideline. I think about with 10-year-old Kevin walking into a Big 12 football program on a daily basis, even if it's just for practice or just for whatever, getting to go in the locker room and things like that. Would 10-year-old Kevin think that's pretty cool? And the answer is yes, because I was a sports nut growing up, and so it obviously would have been cool. So I try to keep that in mind. But yeah, you do get burned out, but at the end of the day, you try to remember that what you're doing is pretty special. And that, I like the impact. I have 10 managers that work for me. Usually it's anywhere between 10 and 15. So you're getting to impact those kids and kind of help guide them. I have a little bit of an old school method, so sometimes it's not as well received as I hope it would be. But, you're there to help people and teach and all of that. So for me, it's bigger than the game. And while I do still enjoy the game, I don't get emotionally involved in the ups and the downs and the wins and the losses, just because, I do my job and to the best of my ability regardless. And then it's up to them to score the points. But, keeping 10-year-old Kevin happy is what I try to do on a daily basis.
Dude, that's so cool, man. Like the 10-year-old self thing. That's a cool little piece of advice too, I would say. But it's awesome to hear like the truth, the transparency behind it all. Also, side note, living in a fifth wheel. So I'm currently the director of marketing services over at Bish's RV. So I talk to a lot of people, I'm working with our affiliates and so forth, any full-time RVers. So I get to see a lot of that life now. I've been doing that for six and a half months. It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool.
It's awesome.
Go ahead.
We really loved it. Like, we wouldn't have changed had it not been for my son. Just knew my wife couldn't be pregnant, and then we knew we couldn't have him, falling down the stairs and things like that. So it was great. We lived fairly inexpensively, and like I said, we were right there on the beach in San Diego. And the only bad part is when we were leaving Tallahassee, it was when, I don't even remember the big snowstorm that hit Texas that winter.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, the truck broke down and we got stuck in Abilene, Texas for 39 days. And part of that was during what they call Snowmageddon. And awesome.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be brutal. What kind of RV did you have? What was the fifth wheel that you had?
We had is a Forest River Alpha Wolf. I think it was 32 feet long. had a mid bunk for my daughter that we had, and she loved it. So she was 3 years old when we left Tallahassee. I just turned 3. First stop was Disney World for her birthday. And then, yeah, so she thought it was great. We had boys with us, and we were good. We thought we were going to be a family of 3. Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. That happens though, right? That's funny how it works, right? Oh, that's cool, man. What a cool story there too, and how it just kind of took you over there to San Diego, which, by the way, in my opinion, San Diego, if I didn't hate California as a state, California, I would live there in a heartbeat if I didn't hate the place. But I love San Diego's most beautiful city on earth, in my opinion. I love that place.
Yeah, and we were out in the east side. It was a little bit more conservative, a little bit more our speed. So we liked it.
Oh, dude.
Expensive, man. We couldn't afford to live there.
Yeah, dude, it is expensive. When I go down there for basketball tournaments, I'm like $6 a gallon for gas. What is going on here? How do people is this normal? Yeah, this is normal. Okay. That's awesome, man. So Kevin, last question for you here is as we wrap up the interview is just what would you say is the biggest life lesson that this job has taught you? I guess the biggest life lesson, whether it be from leadership or mentorship or whatever it might be. What is the biggest lesson you've learned from being in the equipment side of things at this level, in this capacity?
I could go cheesy and say, well, it's taught me hard work and perseverance and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? The best piece of advice I ever got was from my boss, Darren Kearns at Florida State. And he'd been doing it for a long time, a lot of time in the NFL. And it used to piss me off, honestly, when he would say it. He'd always say, we're not going to get rich doing this, so we might as well have fun. And I would be like, what are you talking about? This is serious. We got to do our job. We got to do our job well. Fun is secondary. It's absolutely secondary. But as I've gotten older and done things, I've adopted that myself that, we're not going to get rich doing this. Nobody in the equipment world makes a ton of money. And so you might as well enjoy the time you're spending there. You're spending a lot of time there. I used to yell at my students because they would say that, we're managers. We're a frat. That's our frat. We're managers. And I'd be like, we're not a frat. We're, this is a job. Everybody thinks of frat boys and, all the things that go along with frat boys. So I really fought that. But no, it's a fraternity. It's a brotherhood. Having spent time in the military, it's the closest thing I've found to being in the Air Force that I was, where, you have the same group of guys that you're going to work with day in, day out. The conditions aren't always the best. You're not always thanked for the work you do. You're not always appreciated. You're not always, always paid very well. But you know what? The guys that you're with are going to be some of your best friends that you have your entire life. They're the guys that are going to be in your wedding. So yeah, they're a frat. And so it should be fun. Otherwise, why are you doing it? Because, you are investing so much time. So that's the biggest lesson I've learned along this journey. So it's really helped the last few years because I feel like I'm a better leader. I'm a better boss. I'm a better husband because of having that perspective on things.
That's so dope, dude. I think that's super cool. And actually, that quote right there, I would encourage all of us to just rewind it and listen to it because I think, it can apply to a lot of things. Sure, there's some careers that pay a little bit better than others, but if you're not like an executive or C-suite, whatever, and you don't have ownership in the reality is you're not going to get wealthy unless you're running your own business and doing some investments. That's just the reality of the world we live in, right? So you might as well have fun doing it. I like that. I mean, I love that quote. I want to rewind that and just put it up on a freaking board at my own job. And I'm very blessed. I'm grateful for where I'm at. It's just I think a lot of people in the world lose that perspective and just might as well have fun doing it. They're not going to get rich. I mean, it doesn't mean you're not going to be blessed. It doesn't mean that you're broke, but no one's going to get rich doing this. Yep. Let's have some fun.
and some jobs are easier than others. My job at the end of the week, I get to go stand on the sideline of a football game. That's pretty fun. Some people are doing TPS reports and sending out emails. That doesn't sound quite as much fun to me. So some jobs I get here to find that fun in.
Dude, I love that too. TPS reports reminds me of the movie Office Space too. Anyway. Freaking love it. Kevin, I appreciate you joining the show, man. I'm taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you guys got nighttime stuff over, bedtime with the kiddos and with your wifey. So I'm not going to take any more of your time tonight, but I appreciate you, chatting with me and taking that time, man. It's been awesome chatting with you. And for those who are listening, I would just encourage you guys to hit that follow button. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe to the show. Leave us a review. Help us get this out to more people. But if you're on YouTube and you happen to follow me there, it's my smallest platform by a large margin. I only got like 500 and some odd followers there. But if you guys want to hit that follow button, you can listen to more interviews coming your way. Please do so. And like I said, we'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.